Welcome everyone to this morning's Social System Mapping Tech Talk session for July 22nd, 2024. As usual, your hosts today are me, Christine Capra, and Kara Martner of Greater Than the Sum. And for today's agenda, we're going to do chat intros in a moment. And then Amy is going to walk us through Tim's and maybe say what it is even Tim's header maker, the second session of working with Tim's header maker, which includes identifying and loading and formatting existing data from an existing data set so that it can get put into sumApp. Amy will do her presentation, then we'll stop for questions and answers. And then as usual, we'll have an optional post-session half hour for anyone who wants to stick around and ask more questions. And Amy, I'm not sure if you're sticking around for the extra half hour or not.
I should be able to.
Okay. And yeah, let's just go ahead and have you, I'm going to stop sharing for a moment. Put in the chat. I know you all know each other, so this is a step we could skip, but for the sake of the recording, we'll say we're doing it. We're putting in the chat our name, pronoun, and location. We're also putting in the chat a primary network that each attendee is working with or part of. We assume if you're showing up to these sessions that some kind of network weaving is somehow important to you or a curiosity to you, and that's usually because you're part of one or thinking about one or something like that. So we'd like to know about that, each other's work. And then what brings you here today? So I'll give a moment for people to do that. And even though we have a smallish attendance, I'm assuming that this recording is going to be a valuable one for posterity. So I'm just gonna do all the things for the sake of posterity. And then let's see. So I'll just say that I'm really excited about how Amy has been taking things that she's learning and offering to co-create and co-present and co-share them with the rest of the community. It's a nice example of ripple effects. So Tim has spent considerable time with Amy on a client doing this header maker stuff, and Amy volunteered then to take that and turn it into something that is shareable. And so I just think it's a lovely example of capacity building, sharing capacity building, and just really appreciate that. And so with that, a little bit of whatever. Jim wants to get over the hump with the header maker. Well, hopefully this will work and you'll know where to go when you get stuck. I'm going to hand it off to Amy, but I'm just gonna. Maybe this isn't necessary, but we made the slide, so with that, I'm handing everything off to Amy.
Thank you, Christine.
Yeah.
And thanks, Tom and Jim, for being here. I'm going to now go back and share those same slides. Let's see. Oh, I didn't share where I wanted it to. So, getting myself organized here. Yep. So this is part 2 of the header maker, and it's the what Tim calls the full version. And we did part 1, I don't know, several months ago. And there's a recording, and there's instructions, and there's a way to get the header maker, which is a Google Sheet. If you go to Coda, and Kara is going to put the Coda link in the chat box for those of you who want to have that link handy just to reference back. So we're not going to use that today. And I'm not planning to revisit what we covered in part 1, at least not in any depth. But I think that what we're doing this morning is going to be short enough that once we get through this part 2, there's going to be some extra time if we need to go back and look at things from the part 1 together. Jim, I think you were at the part 1. Tom, did you come to the part 1, or have you seen the video?
I feel like I did somewhere
Okay.
along the way.
I couldn't remember. All right. Or maybe it'll come back to you as we go through. So the purpose of what we're going to go through today, as Christine said, is about using the Google Sheet header maker to clean a pre-existing data set before uploading it to sumApp. And I thought a couple of definitions would be helpful, because they were for me, that in sumApp world, when we are saying basic data, we're referring to these fields: first name, last name, email 1, 2, and segment. And when we're saying pre-existing data, it includes all of these fields from the basic data, plus any additional data. And so imagine the questions that you set up in sumApp. That would be an example of this additional data or pre-existing data. And I think you'll see it more clearly when we go to the Google Sheet. And so as a reminder, in Header Maker Part 1, which you can get through the Coda link that Kara shares, we went through how you clean a basic data set before uploading it to sumApp. So we pulled in our basic data and we went through to make sure it was all good. And then we walked through how we export it again so that we can then import a clean data set into sumApp. And we also went through how to use the header maker to set up your survey questions in sumApp. And again, when I show you guys the Google Sheet, I'll quickly show you where those are. And I think that that'll all come back. All right, let me now share the Google Sheet. Oh, I know one other thing I wanted Kara to do. Kara, would you put in the chat? So I typed up, and Kara went through as well some instructions that accompany this part 2. And so if you want to have the instructions right now, just to follow along, Kara's going to put that link in the chat. And then when we're done going through this example of the header maker, we'll share with you the actual Google Sheet itself. Any questions so far? Everybody good?
Can I say one thing that's not a question?
Absolutely.
And this is because I noticed it, and I'm guessing Tim noticed it, and I don't want him to sit and hold it in his head. Which is that it's email 2, and email 3. And you have email 1, and email 2. So
Thank you for that correction.
teeny tiny
Yes.
detail.
Yes.
I was holding that in my head too.
Oh, good.
Thank
I'm
you.
glad.
But I'm wrong so much. I went, well, maybe it isn't that.
No,
I
I just, yeah. Okay. So that just, I needed
Christine,
to say
thank
that.
you for that correction. Yes.
Okay.
And y'all, and yes, Jim, if you're, and Tom, anybody holding it in your head, You won't bother me if you ask or interrupt or clarify. So this is the header maker, the full version. And this again, Kara's going to give us the link towards the end to this so that you will have it. And I just want to point out, you'll read the disclaimer before you use it. Tim has created this and made it available for us to use, but you want to make your own decisions about using it, but you can read the disclaimer there. And then in this first worksheet, and we're gonna, if we have time, we'll do this towards the end, but I'm not, like I said, I'm not gonna go through everything that we did in part 1. But when you get this link that Kara's going to give you at the end, one of the things you have to do is hit this red button. And what that's going to do is it's going to allow your copy of this Google Sheet to run the script that Tim has put in here. So that's just a step that you'll do. It's also in the instructions that you'll find on Coda. And if we have time, we'll go through that at the end. So that's one of the first things that you do. And then here, one of the things we went through last time, we're on the questions to upload tab. I've already set this up for today's demonstration with 2 questions that we're uploading data into in sumApp. And again, how you do this and walking through is in the part 1. But in this case, we've got a question about cars. That's a select box question in sumApp. And this is our list of cars. And we've got a radio type button question with where your organization operates. So this is our questions that we're going to be uploading. And then here is where we're going to work with our data to clean it, to get it all prepared so that we can then export it to a CSV and then upload it into sumApp. And you might remember from part 1, the first thing that I've got to do is I've got to get my data off of in my case, my laptop into Google. And I've already done that by doing the import function. And here is the data that we're going to work with. So this is my data that I want to get into sumApp. And just yes.
Can I interject a thing that's bugging me?
Yes.
Thank you. I shouldn't have asked for permission. What I should say is I'm choosing to interrupt, and I am perfectly willing for you to say I don't have the capacity for you to interrupt right now.
No, you may interrupt.
Thank you. Okay. So in this last part of this piece that we're doing, you're saying cleaning. And I'm noticing that the bigger and more important piece of this step is formatting so that sumApp can read it. And I feel like for data geeks, that if you only say cleaning, that won't tell them enough about what's actually happening here. And it's important for them to understand that it's not just cleaning, but it's reformatting, especially reformatting headers and extracting what's there. So anyway, I was just feeling, I noted it and I thought I was fine with it. And then I was noticing that it was starting to, from a data geek perspective, it was starting to weigh in my psyche. So thank you for making space.
Yes.
Wait, so I want to jump in at this point too and
Okay,
say
Tim.
we did an upgrade. We fixed some issues with the data upload from the back end, and we don't really need to clean the data like we used to, because now everything pretty much uploads, like all language characters, hidden characters don't break anything anymore. So this is a lot less about cleaning since we upgraded the upload process. But it is a lot, but now it's all about formatting. And you shouldn't run into any problems with like language characters from China or Eastern Europe or Nordic, from languages that have lots of umlauts and whatnot, which used to need to be clean. They need to be turned into Latin characters. That doesn't need to happen anymore.
Thank you, Christine. Everybody else good to move forward?
Yeah.
So this is the data that I pulled off of my computer earlier. And you can just walk across here and see I've got a couple of columns that I'm not going to end up needing, and you'll see kind of what happens with those as we format the data. And I've got my email and my last name and my first name, and I think those are all that I have right now. So that is the data that I have imported. Now I'm ready to work with the header maker and work with all of my data for the formatting. So I'm going to first need to bring in from this CARS test data into this worksheet right here. So I get the data. Again, some of this I'm going through, we did in more detail in part 1. And you guys go away. So I just tell it here, where am I going to be getting this data from, which sheet? In my case, it's the CARS test data. And then I'm going to submit, and just be patient and give it a minute. It's telling me that I don't have email 2, email 3, and
Amy?
segment. Yes,
Jim has a question.
yes,
Is
go
that okay?
Jim.
And you can pull this from anywhere, any spreadsheet, a Google Sheet, Excel,
No,
the imported sheet.
I think you can change, Tim, correct me, but I think you can pull this from any tab in this worksheet. So your first step is to put your data in
Okay.
this worksheet.
Okay.
And then, Tim, is that correct? Okay, but you
Got it.
could potentially have several tabs, like one client's tab and another client's tab. Is that also correct? So let's say you've got 5 clients, pre-existing data in different tabs. You could be telling it which tab you're pulling from. Is that correct? Amy, do you know looks like you know the
Yes,
answer.
I believe that's correct. We could have multiple tabs of data.
Okay. Thanks.
But yes, the data has to already be on one of these tabs. And so what this pop-up box is just telling me, and y'all are seeing my pop-ups, right?
Yeah.
Okay, good. So remember, the basic data has first name, last name, email, email 2, email 3, and segment. And my data set does not have email 2, email 3, and segment. And so it's just saying, do you want to add these? And we need to, because we do need all of those represented. So I'm going to say yes, and it will finish uploading. I got a little pop-up that it's successful, so I can close out of that. And one of the things I'll also tell you is I'm just walking through in order each of these instructions up here. So that's kind of the way that we're using this to work with pre-existing data. So I've got first name, last name, email. I did not have email 2, 3, or segment, but it has a column there. And then it brought in the rest of my data, if you remember from that worksheet. So now I want to hit this next button, which is to proper size the data. And I'm going to hit it because I can't remember exactly what it does. And then I'll tell you what it does. So what it's looking for is to say, do I have am I sure about all of the questions that I want to upload? And do they match the data that I want to upload? So I'm going to back out of this now that I remember what it does, and I want to show you something, and then we'll come back and we'll run it again. So I was saying before, the data uploaded had ID and title, but I don't want that in sumApp. I don't need that in sumApp, but it's okay that it pulled in here because What I do want to send to sumApp is represented in the Quest to Upload worksheet. And this is what I do want to upload. So I do want these to be correct. And so that's what it's checking now that I remember when I hit this button to proper size the data. And we'll look at the pop-up together. So only the questions listed in the Quest to Upload sheet will have import headers made, and everything else will be taken away. So it says it looks good, that it likes the columns that are in the Quest to Upload sheet. But it found 2 in my data that are not in the Quest to Upload sheet. I either need to go fix that, or if I'm okay with that, I can click the proper size button and it's actually going to delete these 2 because I don't need them. Tim, do you want to add anything else to explain what's happening with this one? Did I get it all?
No, you got it all. And this is, for me, very helpful. If you have something with like 50 columns and you only need 10 of them, you don't want to have to go in there and try to figure it out and delete them by hand. So this is a very helpful step.
And that was a lovely spinner that you made.
It's very psychedelic.
Yes, yes, I spent hours and hours and hours putting spinners in this thing.
Okay.
So after I did the proper size, the data, I'm going to just show you what it did over here. It got rid of those 2 extra columns. One was ID and the other, I think, was maybe title. I can't remember. And so those are gone because they didn't have anything that they could match to here. And so as Tim said, that's a time saver. You don't have to delete all those extra columns. It just did it for us.
And just to point out, if you had a question in Question to Upload that's not in the data, that will be added because you're assuming you want to create a header in sumApp. Okay, sorry.
And it'll add for you, right, Tim?
Yep.
We don't have to do anything. Okay.
Right.
I'm sorry, could you say that again? It threw me right there. Can't say that. Okay. Can you repeat that for you, maybe? No, I just didn't get, in one case, it gets rid of it because it's not showing up as a column header, but then you said it would add if it wasn't there, or that's what I heard.
So Tim, I'll try to do it with a visual and then you, right. So if I had another question here, Jim,
Yeah,
let's say, I don't know, what city do you live in?
yeah.
But I didn't have it in my data, it would still add, when we go to make the headers, it would still add this as a question, even though there wasn't any data there.
Got it.
Okay. I'll go ahead and hit the validate button because I think it's fun and I like when it gives me positive reinforcement. And so this is where we did this in part 1. This is where it's checking my basic data columns to just see if everything looks good or if there's anything that needs to be fixed. And so the first name column looks good. I'll say, okay.
Can I just
last name.
say, Tim, you really go out of your way to foolproof this stuff.
We'll
Yes.
see.
Yes, well, you might run into edge cases. You might run into edge cases, in which case let me know so I can fix them. But yes, I spent probably 1,000 hours in here. Well, that might be a bit of
A slight exaggeration time-wise, but it is his little pet hobby, is he's always cleaning up. He'd be sitting at his desk and I'm like, what are you working on? I'm cleaning up my code and my header maker. Always.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry.
And it is. And I love how I can just go from over here to over here and do all of the steps. So yeah, love how that's set up. All right, so data's validated. Okay, here's a new thing that we didn't have in part 1. This is part of part 2, because we're working with pre-existing data, and that's to replace the delimiter. So sumApp needs, if over here in cars, I can have multiple choices. So for Amelia, she's got a Toyota, a Honda, and a Ford. And my data had these separated with a semicolon, but sumApp needs them to have a pipe. And so that's what this is going to allow. This is going to do this for me. So I'm going to replace the delimiter that's a semicolon with one that's a pipe by hitting this button and following the instructions that are going to pop up. So I'll do, if I have multiple columns with the ability to have multiple answers, I have to do this for each column. In this case, I only have one. And so I'll tell it the column that I'm working with where I want to replace the delimiter is cars. And then I tell it what needs to be replaced. What did I use in my data that now needs to be replaced with the pipe? And I used semicolon. And I hit my submit button. And it should have replaced it. Closing out. And so it took care of that for us.
Can I ask a
Any
question? A clarifying question? It looked, so Tim, it looked like when once Amy selected the question that she wanted to change the delimiter for, it looked like there was semicolon was the only option, which made me think, does your code automatically identify every delimiter that's in there? And then you if there were, because sometimes you have data where in one cell it's a semicolon, in one cell it's a dash, in one cell it's a colon, like the data has come from different sources, and so there's different delimiters. Was your code identifying all the bad delimiters and then you would go through them one at a time to replace? No?
No, it's only finding the one delimiter you put in there. So most things in a column are delimited just by one thing, not by multiple things. That's mostly my experience. But if you have multiple, you just run it multiple times
That's what, okay.
with different delimiters. Yeah.
Is it looking for the unwanted delimiters when you hit that, or is it assuming that you've already visually identified those unwanted delimiters?
No, I'm not sure I understand your comment. It's looking for in the questions to upload, it's looking for the list that's in there and changing the delimiters based on your list. So it's
Right.
not changing any characters
Yeah, I get that.
being used in some other way.
Right. But here's what I'm trying to understand is, let's say you have someone has like the general data set is being delimited by colons. That column is being delimited by colons, right? But somebody somewhere along the line typed something in with a semicolon. That there would be two different.
Yeah, so you'd have to run it twice.
But
yeah.
would you, and in that case, you probably wouldn't want to, but would you have to have seen that visually, or is it finding them in the column?
No, you'd have to know
You'd
that
have to
that's
see that.
there. Yeah, no,
Okay.
it's pretty dumb. It only knows what you told it to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So you have to know what the delimiters you want to change first.
Okay.
Yeah. Does that answer your question?
It does.
Okay.
Thank you. So can I ask a follow-up question though?
Sure.
Let's say you fixed the semicolons and there just happened to be a colon in there that you didn't see.
Mhm.
Then when you tried to upload it, what would happen to that?
Yeah, it'd probably break the upload because it wouldn't know what to do with it. It's not finding that. It would think whatever was separated by a colon was its own choice. And since it wouldn't find that in sumApp, it wouldn't upload. It would say there is something wrong.
And then you'd have to figure it out and go back.
Yeah.
and fix that. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, that's why, this is just helpful. You still have to know what your data is doing.
It's not as foolproof as I said. It's pretty foolproof.
Oh yeah, it can't read anybody's mind or
No, I know.
anything like that or
I know. I just. Okay, thank you.
yeah, yep.
All right, so our next step is to make our headers. And for this button, it's going to refer back to our questions to upload. And it's also going to do some checking for us in case there's some things that we need to correct before it makes the header. So let's see what happens. So Chelsea, here I have Mazda in my imported data, but it says in my questions to upload, I have Mazda. And that this is thanks to Tim. I thought that was a cute error. I'm going to close and let's just take a look at what's happening. And so I can close because I need to figure this out first. So everything, this is my imported data. Everything here, it must be represented here. Okay, and so in this case, I just have a typo and I need to correct that, which I will do right now. But the reverse is not true. So if over here, if you look at my state data, I don't have Tennessee, but I do have Tennessee here. And that's okay because it just means that there's nobody in this list whose organization was in Tennessee. So that's not gonna bother anything. But the main thing is I need everything that's here represented over here, or it's going to tell me I need to fix something.
And
So
notice that it's case sensitive because it doesn't know what you actually want. So if in sumApp it's all capital, and then in questions they upload, you have it, the way it was, you have it just the first letter capitalized and the rest of it lowercase. It's going to find that as an error because it's psychopathically literal.
And Jim has a question.
Yeah.
So in your initial data, if people are all over the map misspelling things because you didn't have buttons for them or whatever, then this is a place where you're going to do a lot of hands-on work going back and forth. Right. Okay. Got to do it somewhere.
Yeah. I would like to add just one thing about what a header means in this context. So in a spreadsheet, the header can just be the words at the top of the column, and that's adequate. But when we get into survey data land and when we're trying to load the info into sumApp, basically the header is setting up the question in sumApp. So it's the label of the question, the actual literal words of the question. It's also telling sumApp the type of question, if it's a text box or a radio button or a drop down. And it's also telling sumApp every single option in the option list and exactly how it's spelled. So the header maker, if you're making it, you can make it manually by yourself if you just have to look at the structure of it and go, okay, now I put all these options in. But if you make a single typo, then you're going to have a mismatch. You might have Mazda and Mazda both in your, or whatever. You'll be introducing incorrect options or leaving out options or whatever. So the header maker is really about making that top cell understandable in all the various pieces that it needs to for sumApp to understand, from the content to the label to the type, and to whether it's required or not is even another piece of that puzzle, but maybe it's not in the header maker. So that's why the header maker is so helpful to have that automated.
All right, I'm going to hit make headers again now that I've fixed the Mazda. Let's see if it gives me anything else to look at. It did not, so it ran successfully. And so it's put in this box here what's going to be needed in sumApp. Can you see up here, guys, to create that question that it pulled from this first worksheet? And then got through Mazda. This one you might remember, I didn't have Tennessee in my actual data, but it is going to be in my list when it turns into a question in sumApp. And so then we're ready to export our data into a CSV that then can be uploaded into sumApp. And so that concludes what I prepared for you guys for part 2. Tim, Christine, anything you want to add? Thank you for the applause.
This is great.
Yeah, you did a good job. Thank you.
I really
You're welcome.
appreciate your breaking things down and your calm, take piece by piece and working through it and clarifying. You're a very good teacher.
Thank you. Thank you. I enjoy doing it.
Teacher, I have a question.
Yeah, well, let's see who can answer.
I'm just the initial data, getting it into the Google Sheet, the header maker Google Sheet tab. Are there any constraints or things I should watch out for if I'm pulling it from a spreadsheet, from Excel or from other sources, CSV text file or something? Like when it goes into the spreadsheet, am I going to have any problems with that, or is it just like just bring it in, import it, and header maker will take it from there?
Yeah, it should just go smooth, you know, unless you've downloaded your data from some other source and you opened it in Excel, and Excel or a CSV will sometimes, particularly Microsoft is known for this because of how they would call encoding their data. It will not read like certain European characters or and give it these weird, I don't even know what to call them, these weird encoding characters instead. Yeah, that's a problem, in which case you'll have to fix that somehow.
I think I'm asking that question.
Yeah.
So if I just have a spreadsheet, a Microsoft spreadsheet,
Mhm.
if I just copy and then paste into the Google spreadsheet.
It's
Yeah.
usually better if you upload it because it will try to fix some of those errors if you just copy and paste it. It will if you have some of that problem that
Okay.
Microsoft gives you, it will just read it as a character if you copy it and paste it. But if you upload it, Google might try to reinterpret
Okay.
those miscoded characters and put them back into a readable language.
I missed that. So basically
Yeah.
you're hitting an upload button, selecting whatever the source is, and it
Yeah.
will put it into, okay.
Yeah, we'll try to do that. Yeah.
I didn't
Okay.
know that you could upload from a tab to a tab. I thought you could only upload a whole file. Does that mean I'm wrong?
I don't recall. I guess I usually just upload CSV files, but yeah, I'm not sure if it will upload the whole sheet if you have multiple files, or if it just asks you which sheet you want.
Do you?
Yeah, I don't know either. I was
Yeah.
gonna say, Jim, when we so the way I got the data in there was just under the file and import. And then I told it which file I wanted to upload.
Oh, and that'll import that file into, because if it's a CSV, it's a single sheet anyway, and that will import that single sheet as a new tab in that file. Is that what you're saying? What looks like that's where that's going.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
So
Wait,
you
wait a
can-
second though. Amy, you're uploading the whole file, multiple sheets.
I
multiple
don't have
tabs.
multiple sheets in my test
Okay.
data.
So we don't know exactly
So
what that would do.
I don't know. I'm just gonna pick something. But I don't think there's multiple sheets. The one thing I was gonna show you, this is I don't want to create a new spreadsheet. I want to create a new sheet because it does have to stay within this.
Got it. That's helpful.
But
Yeah, you got to make the right choice there. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which is easy
and then
to
I have
not do.
then I have whatever this is. This is another play data I think that we were working with. Yeah.
Oh, can I ask a clarifying question about this step? It's, will it only upload CSVs even if they're coming out of Excel, or will it upload to XLXMX, whatever those are, Tim?
We'll what upload it.
Okay, if you do what Amy just did, you go
Uh-huh.
in and you go to import data, and then you're looking for a file. Does that file already have to be a CSV, or will it take a,
No, you can use a XLS
okay,
yeah.
okay,
Maybe a text file too. I'm not sure. I've never tried, but probably lots of formats you can upload.
okay. Thanks.
That's my guess. I mean. Oh, the one last thing I would say that's very important, when you upload your data to sumApp, your file has to be saved as a UTF-8 CSV. So when you download your data from Google, it's automatically a UTF-8 file. But if you open it, say in Excel, or you do a bunch of work, you have to go to that save when you're in your Microsoft, go to your save as, and then choose the CSV UTF-8. If it's not that, it won't upload anymore. You'll just get an error saying something went wrong, and that's what's wrong.
Where is that point saving the CSV and UTF-8?
Want me to show?
That save as, like if you're in a Microsoft, it's like you're in your Excel or you're in a CSV.
In my source data.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Once you've downloaded it, if you do other things, you just want to make sure you're resaving it as a UTF-8 CSV. If you don't do anything, it'll just upload because it'll already be formatted that way or encoded that way.
Jim, is
Okay,
that
good.
clear? Jim, are you clear what he said?
I'm going to just have to walk through. I'm going to go through both videos, part 1, part 2. I'm going to take some data. I have not ever loaded pre-existing data, so I'm going to go ahead and do that. It seems like it's really important for lots of people have lots of data.
Yeah, everybody wants to bring their data along lately.
I
And it's
find
always
it's
this
easy.
hesitant question. Does everybody have to re-enter their data? And I can just hear the ache in their voice.
Yep, yep. Say no, you can just give me a bunch of headaches to deal with.
Well, I just want to point out, if in sumApp there's already data in there, you cannot overwrite it with a C. You cannot overwrite the data by uploading something. Yeah, because it assumes that whoever put the data in there was the person that belongs to. So sumApp isn't going to overwrite their choices. You can only add data to what doesn't have data.
Can I reframe that?
Sure.
So, because I see Tom's eyes, oh, I think Tom now is frozen, in a confused look. Okay, there you are. So what Tim means is, let's say you have, like, we've had this situation where, we're getting registrations from an event registration form, and there's, 10 extra questions that the client needs for registration, but they also want it loaded into sumApp, and they're gathering registrations over time. So over a month, say. So let's say, and we've decided that we're gonna load this registration form data 3 times over the course of the month that they have the registration form open. So the first time we load it, we've got, say, 100 names. They go into sumApp. People are being invited to update their their stuff in sumApp. And then the second time we load it, there's 300 names. We don't have to worry, we don't have to worry about taking out the first 100 names. It will just, if they're, if nothing in the export has changed, it's not going to, it will just confirm that everything's the same for those people. But if the people who did the first 100, if the first 100 names, if somebody went in and said, oh, you have my title wrong, or, oh, I've, moved from Minneapolis to St. Paul, something like that, sumApp, when it's loading the data, will take the most recent version of every single cell. So if the user has changed that data in their survey that's more recent than the previous load. And so sumApp won't overwrite it with the old. So maybe in the registration form, they don't go back and say, oh, the title's wrong. And oh, I moved in the last 3 weeks. And it doesn't matter if they go back to the registration form or not, because that's for a separate purpose, or we don't care anyway. But so this way, when people are changing their data, if you're having to continue to upload from the same data source that's growing, you won't drive your map users nuts by them having to say, God, I keep changing this to St. Paul and I'm getting so, like, why does it keep going back to Minneapolis every time we load? So that's what, so when Sim says you can't, he doesn't mean you can't load new data or load the same data again. He's saying sumApp won't overwrite what the people have done in the survey.
So
But
can I
if you're
follow up?
Go ahead.
So when does it not overwrite then?
When there's something newer. Can you give an example of the question in your head?
I would just say that it doesn't overwrite a field that has data in it. It only adds to an empty field.
Oh, right. Okay. Yeah.
But if the source data has changed, the second time you load it, you've got another 300 people, but somebody went back to the original source and they changed their data, that won't overwrite.
Ah.
Right? That was a question, sorry.
Correct.
I understand that.
You got, yeah, once there's data in a field, the only way to change it is somebody to go into their survey and change it manually.
Okay.
Yeah, no uploads will overwrite anything that has an answer.
I got it. Thank you.
Now I feel a need to clarify the one exception to that rule. Or actually, which is the basic data. So for instance, if you were just loading the basic data and you had a segment scheme and then somebody changed the segment scheme, you can change your segments in your spreadsheet and reload it, and the segments will get overwritten. Right, Tim?
Yeah, first name, last name, and segment are the 3 fields that you can overwrite something that has data in it. Because people change, because you can update their names, or if you can update their segments with the uploaded data set, even if there's data there. Just those 3 fields though.
So it matches on email?
Yeah, it matches on email. Yep. So if somebody changes their primary email, you have to go do that manually.
Cool.
Kara, I'm wondering, did you already hit that button? Do you want to share your screen? You know what I'm talking about, to just show them that first thing they've got to do to give permission to the script? Would you be comfortable doing that?
I can try. I may have already approved, so we'll have to see here.
Okay.
No.
Can you see my tab?
We can.
Yeah, it's already been approved.
How can you tell?
Because you wouldn't be where you are if it hadn't been approved already. It wouldn't get this far along.
So that version is Tim's version, and then I think part of the instructions is that you make a copy for yourself.
Yeah,
And so
yeah,
maybe,
yeah. I was.
but I thought
Yeah,
it was
yeah.
once you get into the actual running the script that it asks maybe. So maybe I have already.
So
done
where
it.
I think of doing it, Kara, is in the worksheet.
Mhm.
That's the quest to upload worksheet.
Mhm.
Any button should work as long as you
Oh,
press
does any
something.
button do it?
Yeah,
Oh,
it
there you
should
go. Yeah.
should make that
Mhm.
pop up.
Okay, so pause for before you hit that.
Mhm.
So this, for anybody who's watching, what we're doing now is explaining how when you first get access to this file, if you've never opened the file before, Google doesn't want you to open it without authorizing it because it has active code in it. And so it could be nefarious code, it could be some kind of thing you don't want to have happen. And so Google is protecting you. And so you have to tell Google it's okay, you trust this file. And so when you click on any of the buttons that run code, the first time you do that, you will get this authorization request. And so Kara's going to walk you through what the authorization request looks like now.
And we'll click OK. And you'll get a pop-up that shows your Google sign-in authentication. And so I'll just click on my email address here. Mhm.
And we're not seeing that.
We're not seeing that.
Oh, let me
Oh.
see if I can share my whole screen.
I think I think it doesn't.
Let me see if I have to have it run again.
No. Okay.
Can you see it now?
Yes.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
I'll click on my email address, and then it's asking you to give permissions. It'll show you the different permissions that it needs for the spreadsheet, along with a little warning down here to be sure that you trust what you're accessing. And I will click allow. And then I believe that is all you need to then be able to use the buttons.
I thought there was an advanced warning thing.
I believe they've gotten rid of that because Google did some recent updates to their sign-in prompts.
Okay.
I have a
Okay.
question about this. So do you bring in header maker for the first time, and then do you just keep using this app and just add tabs, and every time you have a new project, you're just adding tabs there, or do you bring up header maker fresh every time you've got a new project?
That just
I mean-
depends on what you want to do. You could just not, now that you've done this, you own this. I don't have no one but you has access to it. And then you could every time you have a new project, you could just make a copy of this, so that everything is nice and siloed, or you could just add tabs. But every time you have a new project, you have to change the questions to upload to reflect that. So you could always just keep making copies of the questions to upload tab and just call it 1, 2, 3, whatever. And then every time you want to use it, you just have to make sure you're using the questions to upload. So if you have to go back to your third project, just make sure that you rename questions to upload. You take away the 3. Does that make sense? Does that make sense?
I
Kara,
think
do
so,
you
yeah.
want to, Kara, would you stop sharing and I'll do a reset with mine? And show Jim at least one way to do it, Jim. At least this is what I do to keep it simple. Is when I'm done with this project, I'd either make a whole nother copy or I would reset it. So this button here resets, takes out all this data so I can start over, and it takes out all this data so I can start over.
And then you just run through all the steps that are in the first time you'd run through them, and that would then fill in all the pieces that were pre-made for this presentation. Is that correct?
Right. So I actually, and one of the things I love that Tim did is I actually, because I might want to do this presentation again, I don't want to delete this data because I don't want to have to set it up again. So I'm going to cancel out and say, don't clean this one up. I like this one. Or I'm going to use it again, but I am going to get rid of this one here. So I'm going to let it clean that out so I can start over with a new data set. And then I've got my original data still out here.
And did you say that you could just copy the whole spreadsheet for a new project? So leave the old one intact. And,
Yeah, you just go
Right.
to file and make a copy. You'll have to give that new one a permission to run again. But if you do just have like say you have 5 projects, if you go in and delete the questions to upload, like if you have 15 questions and 10 of them have an option list, once you deleted it, if you have to go back to that project, you're going to have to go recreate that. So you might want to copy that and just put it somewhere else so you don't have to recreate it. That can take a lot of time. Or like you said, just make a whole new copy, and that way it's always there. You have to go back to it.
one more really basic question. So you clean up the data, you've got it all sitting there, and then how are you getting it into sumApp?
Can I pause us here for just a moment? I just want to do a time check. I just want to acknowledge that it's the time we would do announcements, and Amy, if you want to skip announcements because everybody's here and knows the announcements coming up, we could do that. And then now it's a minute before the drop-off time, so I just want to just acknowledge Tom and Jim. Are you? Jim. I'm assuming you're going to stick around long enough to at least get your question answered.
That's it. And then I'm
Yes, and I'm assuming we will get your question answered. I just want to acknowledge the top of the hour and see if Tom needs to jump off, or if anybody else needs to jump off.
I do need to drop off, yes.
Okay. So if Jim's basic question was important, you'll know where to find it, which is at the top of the hour of the recording. Thanks for
Good to see you, Tom.
So let's just say goodbye to Tom. Bless you.
Thanks,
Have a
Tom.
good day.
Take care. Have a great
Oh.
day.
This is why I use Amy to do all this work anyway, so really interesting, but I'm glad she really understands it.
Well,
That's
the
not-
two
that's-
that helped me do everybody else on the screen is the reason I understand it.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
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 Okay, so back to your basic question. Sorry to interrupt.
It's just how does the data get into sumApp from here? Now you've got this cleaned sheet. Oh, there's a pre-existing. It asks you in the launch data or launch. Yeah, I got it.
Can I just want to interject because I could haven't been misreading your face, but I was noticing when Tim had said about, I just want to say there was a piece a little while back where you were asking clarifying questions, and it didn't look to me like it fully got landed for you. And so I'm going to just try saying it a different way. And if it did fully get landed, this will just land it even more so. And if it didn't fully get landed, hopefully this will help clarify. This is when you were saying you just need to go through both of the videos right there. This point of this was what Tim was talking about saving it as UTF-8. Before you get to this point of all the data is cleaned, all the headers are made, everything is the way you want it now, there's a step where you download the data. And if you don't open up the data in Excel, you just download the file. It will be in a CSV, and then you go to sumApp and locate the file and load it. You're good. You don't have to think about UTF-8. The thing is, if you download it into Excel and open it in Excel and do something, you have to make sure that you save as UTF-8 at that point before trying to put it into sumApp. So that very last step of the very final perfect clean data, just make sure it doesn't accidentally by Excel get saved as the wrong file type, because did it land now?
I'm practicing faces that are transparent.
Yeah, there are a bunch
Wait,
of
Tim, pause. Jim, I just want to see, is that,
That's what
okay, it landed?
Yeah, no, I was thinking it was before
Yeah, I
loading
could
it
see
into,
yes.
into Header Maker.
No, before it goes into Header Maker, it's that last step.
Yeah, no, I
before it goes
got
into
it.
sumApp. Okay, great. And then Tim, I'm sorry I cut you off. I just want to make sure I understood what was going on for him.
Yeah, there are a lot of choices, a lot of CSV choices.
Yeah.
There's like 3 or 4 of them. You just have to
Right.
make sure you choose the right one. Yeah.
Yay. Thank you for face reading.
That's a leadership role, is tracking the needs of the whole and if things landed and if cycles got closed. So I'm practicing that.
And I just want to thank you, Amy, for taking this on and bringing it out to this level. And I really appreciate that work. And I also appreciate Tim and Kara and Christine in backing you up to make that happen, because I can see there's a lot back in the machinery, and then there's Tim's thousands of hours. But hopefully this is going to free you up, Tim. Then what will you do?
Anything else? Is this
Not for me.
great? Thank you, Tim, for all of that. Header maker, tweaking and tweaking and tweaking and tweaking for the last decade, kind of.
Yeah, years.
And thank you, Amy, for really digging in and learning and understanding it and being willing to translate into a format that is shareable with other people and they can follow along and makes a good resource. It's great. And thank you, Kara, for always being the backup for all the little things.
Happy to help.
Okay.
All right.
Till next
Good
time.
to see you all.
Okay.
Bye.
Have a wonderful rest of your day.
Yep.